There we go. Okay, welcome everyone. So I would like to introduce you to our executive director for the Whistler Film Festival. We have Josh Epstein here, and we have Lynn Booth, and she's the Doc Lab advisor and mentor for the lab. And then we also have the legendary Selwyn Jacob, who we just are so happy can join us again this year to help mentor the lab. And welcome to everybody who's here. I recognize Arnold. Arnold. And we also have, and Aaron, thank you for coming. We kind of had a little chat earlier this week. So it's welcome to everybody. I'm going to be in the background and I'm going to let Josh take it from here.
Hi, Josh Epstein. Welcome to the Doc Lab 2026 Q&A. Um, I'm very excited for this program. I do love docs. I was involved in the Carol Pope doc. I wear the hat.
Wow.
And I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. We did have a very good response for the lab submissions. So, I guess not everybody had questions, but we had much more than we anticipated. So it's great to see you all. We're going to be recording and posting this event on the website. We acknowledge that the Whistler Film Festival is located on the unceded territory of the Skokomish Nation and the Lillooet Nation. We honor their language, culture, and history. So, good news. We're currently in the midst of planning the Whistler Film Festival and the Content Summit. So the dates are December 2nd to 6th. Please sign up for the newsletter to stay up to date. Instagram is a good one for that and announcements. And the deadline for the applications is September 14th. Tuition is $750. And please check the website for all the guidelines and information. So moving forward for here, it's a safe space for sharing information, asking questions. And then Shelly is incredible. Just reach out to her directly if you have questions after the Q&A. Her email is in the chat. So I'll hand it over back to Shelly.
Okay, and I'm going to let Lynn take it from here. Thanks, Josh, and we will all see you at the festival. Okay, so Lynn, I'm going to let you do your introduction for yourself and then Selwyn and explain sort of what's happening. And first of all, I do want to thank our sponsors, Knowledge Network, and we have BC. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong papers here. Okay, so I'll let Lynn, you take it from here.
Okay, so I think you were saying we're thankful to our sponsors, Creative VC and Knowledge Network, who support the lab. And yes, we're here today. Selwyn and I have, I guess, worked together over the last 5 years, maybe with Shelley and the Whistler Film Festival Summit and Film Festival team. So it's great to be back. This is one of my favorite things every year, because there's nothing more exciting than filmmakers with their projects and a film festival, and the wonderful Selwyn Jacob. So basically what happens is there's a committee or a selection committee, and they go through all the applications, and then there's a cohort created, and then sometime in November we do a couple of short 2 to 3 hour online meetings. You'll also be matched with one of your mentors for a one-on-one prep for the market. And then during the actual festival, that's where it used to be a longer process, but we found that really the value comes from connecting with your cohort, your mentor, but primarily focusing on the content summit and festival, 3 days. And where we just get together and we start to do some panels, discussions with other documentary filmmakers, with distributors, with impact producers. We try to, match and tailor the lab to what the cohort expresses as their sort of priorities. We focus a little bit on story development one-on-one, but at the market, we're all about making introductions to the people that can help you advance your film project and your career. So it's focused on your project, but it's also an opportunity to make national, international, and regional connections. And it's, sort of something that generally people make contacts with people that go on to support their film and their other work. I'll turn it over to Selwyn, who probably everybody knows a bit here as one of our leading producer filmmakers in Canada, as a documentary filmmaker with the National Film Board, but also independently now. So Selwyn, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the lab?
Not specifically about the lab, but what I'd like to talk about is the uniqueness of this sort of coming together or gathering place. And one of the things that jumped out at me when I was reading the description of the lab is that we're trying to create a safe space. I think that's very important when you want to be a filmmaker. You have an idea, but you don't have the courage or the conviction, to even tell your project to somebody because you feel you're going to be laughed at or ignored or what have you. And I think what this aspect of what we're trying to do here in Whistler, it gives you the opportunity to share your story idea with colleagues who are receptive to your idea and who would give you feedback in a positive way. And that's something that is immeasurable when you're in the business of filmmaking. Lynn and I always say this to people. When I made films in my basement. I took it to Banff, and then I showed it to some colleagues, and then they started giving me all of these interesting things, which I should have known before I made the film. So unfortunately, you're sort of hitting yourself, why didn't I do this, and so on. So this aspect of making the documentary, what I call making the film on paper, or making the film before you make the film, it gives you that opportunity to try things out and get honest feedback from your colleagues. And that's very important. So what you will get from this, in my opinion, you'll become a cohort, right? And there'll be a lot of camaraderie existing during this phase and beyond this phase. Again, that's something that you couldn't plan for, but you'll run into people afterwards and say, what's happening with your project? And just even a question like that motivates you to take that next step. So in a sense, this is something that this cohort is all about. And yep, and I'm always excited to meet new people and hear new projects, new ideas. That energizes me. And that's the reason I think they call me a legend. I've been doing it for a very long time. It doesn't get stale or boring for me. I'm always excited meeting new people with new ideas, new stories to be told. Back to you, Lynn.
Yeah, it is a privilege to be part of the cohort, but also for myself as a mentor, facilitator of the lab. It is seeing those projects and filmmakers advance their projects. And sometimes people let go of their projects, but they find something else, and they've made connections through the lab that help support their filmmaking. I also should mention that Baljit Sangra is one of the other mentors of our group. She's not able to be here today due to personal obligations, but she will be part of the lab. And she's been a documentary filmmaker for over 20 years now. And I'm pretty sure everybody has some, maybe they don't know her, but someone has made, what, 5 films with Baljit over the last
Four
decades?
films. Yeah,
4
no,
films.
going back more than. So I made my first film was around 2006, was a co-production. So I was the producer, NFB producer on that project. Then I did Because We Are Girls. I was a producer in that. And then since I retired, I was executive producer on a film about Punjabis in hockey. And the last one, Have You Heard Judy Sing? So I have that relationship working with her as a producer and as an executive producer. I know her very well, and I think she brings a lot to this cohort.
Right. And I guess I'll just talk a little bit more about what happens typically on the ground there. Is we arrive on the Wednesday, which is December the 2nd. We've already had a couple of online short meetings in November to prepare for the summit for the festival itself. And then we network with the other documentary producers, filmmakers, broadcasters, distributors, agents, whoever are there, and we attend maybe a film or two together. We attend the other summit panels that are directly related to kind of what we're working on, and we basically have a great creative and industry event together. I see a question in the chat.
No,
that
it's just
says,
me.
You have your own
That's
Doc
just
Lab
me.
meeting room as a home base there. Yes, Shelley, thanks for. Yes, we do have a room that's designated for us. So that's where we can come and go and have our meetings as we just adjacent to the summit. But probably we can get into the questions now. Is that?
I just wanted to know, I'm just going to ask on behalf of somebody else, what happens on those two online days? Like they're from 10 to 1, I think. And what are you going to do
November
at that?
12th and 19th is our scheduled. The first one, what we have done in the past is maybe done some, we did a pitch prep. I think this year the plan is to actually have people come and just present their projects and meet each other online for the first session. And then meet with your mentor and practice a presentation of your project. And then we come back on the next one and we do that as a sort of a run through and get some feedback in a very supportive environment before we actually get to the festival. So it's really just introducing your project, getting some feedback, identifying what your sort of prep is for the market, meeting with your mentor, coming back for the online, doing a run through of your presentation. It's in a very friendly online supportive environment, and then prepping for the market itself for the summit.
Okay, and if you're going to get into questions, we have one from one of our people. What level of preparedness should one's doc project be to make the most use out of this lab? Selwyn, maybe you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about that, and I think we might have discussed it when we had a preliminary meeting. I think it's difficult in the sense that everybody's project would be at a different stage of development, so that there's no specific answer. There are people who come in and they're sort of still trying to figure out their project. So in which case we find just even pitching your project to your colleagues and being forced to answer certain questions, that clarifies the things in your head. So I think that could be one answer. But then there could be people who have been working on the projects for a significant period of time, and they're further along with the project. So I think the advantage of what we are doing is that we can respond in real time and give you the advice for the person who is still groping with the project. As a matter of fact, sometimes you realize this may not even be the project that I want to make after you get some of the feedback. That's part of the process. So in summary, it's process oriented, and it depends on where you are actually at with your project, and we can take it from there.
So
Lynn?
how does the mentorship work with that? Like with that same question, maybe Lynn, like how does it literally work for the one-on-ones? Like for your one-on-one.
Back to the question of the level of preparedness. I think when we look at applications that we are looking for the filmmaker to have a subject that they like, it would be, we're expecting you to have at least done some development where you have a subject access, or like ideally, if I look back at the projects that we've selected, we typically have received projects that are in development. Some of them might have some filming that has been done and they have a sizzle or not, but we are looking for the filmmaker to know generally the subject, their approach, why they're making it. And so there is a level of preparedness. We're expecting that's going to evolve potentially as you get feedback, but I think we're not necessarily looking for a treatment or fully realized deck or sizzle, but we are looking for a filmmaker who has a clear idea of the kind of film that they want to make and why they're making it and how they might be making it. So I think that's the preparedness. Does that answer the question, Shelley?
I think so. This is one that's kind of slides into that is what is narrative positioning statement? Like can you give an example of what that would look like for people
I'm
who
going
aren't
to
sure?
throw that over to Selwyn.
Well, I saw that term there, and I didn't. I thought it had come from. It's a novel expression for me, but I'm assuming that you're referring to whether you're making a POV doc, in which case I think you are in the story in a way, and it reflects your personal take on a certain topic, or whether you're doing something where you're taking a kind of an omniscient perspective. You have several characters, and these characters would be contributing different portions of the story. So narrative is really a relative term. I mean, if you're doing something let somebody was excited about football. We just had the FIFA program, and you saw all these different celebrations, and you're doing a film about how Vancouver reacted to all these different cultures interacting, and you say, okay, maybe I could just go down to Granville Street and cover the different cultural things. So that narrative, you cannot really predict that narrative. So that narrative is going to come out as a result of you observing how the cultures reveal themselves in a given context. And
That's an
so,
interesting perspective on narrative positioning. As a producer, I see it more as the kind of thing that you're required by the CMF, Creative BC, or other funders. Like it's something that where we have to explain as filmmakers, where are we within the story? Like, are we a member of the community that we're looking at? This is a requirement now, a narrative positioning attestation where you describe, if you're making a film about people who are differently abled or have different life experiences, you have to really say, this is where my lived experience intersects with my subjects. This is the kind of, respectful positioning that I have, the understanding, and where I have shortcomings, I have built out my, consulting, or, I've gone and talked to organizations and had guidance and feedback. So I think that's another aspect of the narrative positioning that so when we're talking about our application, it's just asking you to some extent to explain how this story and the subject and the participants or the subjects of your film relate to your lived experience and your understanding.
So does this is another question, does it play into that as well? Is there still room for the old-fashioned neutral or objective documentary, or must all docs now advocate for a specific POV?
I don't know I'm trying to think of what that either or doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because I don't know if anything is truly objective, but we're not typically a journalistic, we're not journalists, but we've had people who are making historical documentary that's not like an auteur POV necessarily. But what do you think, Selwyn?
Well, again, we're sort of grappling with, trying to put things in boxes and so on. But at the end of the day, it will come back to the initial story that stirred your imagination. And depending on whatever stirred your imagination would suggest to you that this is the narrative, that approach that you'd like to take. That's how I'll answer that. That will determine whether you're doing a POV documentary, as you say, or an investigative, or objective, or what have you, or just fly on the wall observational documentary. There's all these these ranges. It's got to start off with the story, the initial motivation.
Yeah. That's the word that I think we're looking for, unique or, original stories and not necessarily, they could be an advocacy piece, but they're story driven, and they could be, there are many, many forms for the documentary. And I guess we do appreciate creative documentary storytelling.
We have a question here as well that depending on the stage the documentary is actually in, what kind of budget and financial scenario are you looking for the application? Like, what do you want to see? Example, pre-production development budget, full project budget, post-production budget, all of the above. How would you like to speak to that?
I'll answer that really quickly because I think that's one thing we really don't like. If you had just a very basic idea, we're not really looking for you to have a fully realized financing scenario or budget. If you have an idea, like I think I can make this for $100,000, I can make this for $1 million, but really this is really not a key element to the application, in my opinion. Selwyn?
Yeah, I think it's too early to kind of figure out. I mean, you may go into thinking that you're going to make a 15-minute documentary. You do your research and you think, I can't tell this story in 15 minutes. I need half an hour or I need an hour. And each one of those changes impact the budget. And so you never will know what the budget is because you don't know what the film is at the very beginning. So I don't think I'd put too much emphasis on the budget at this stage.
And financing. Yeah, we really don't look like that's not even if you had it wildly out of context, like you thought, oh, I'll get a $2 million budget for this. And we will not, I don't think the selection is very focused on that. It's really about storytelling, access, the creative vision, and having a sense. And all of that other stuff will come later.
And if I can just jump in here, and I think that's where the mentoring would come in. If I were mentoring you on a half an hour documentary and I see thing, okay, I'm going to use this excerpt from this feature film, blah, 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 or I'm going to use this music by this Canadian artist. And I said, what is your budget for music and what is your budget? And just with that initial read of your project, I said, well, I don't think you could make that film with this type of budget. Have you thought about doing this instead?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where mentoring comes in because at that stage, if you've never made a documentary, you have no idea what rights to archival materials, what it will cost you. A lot of people put the materials in the film, and when they hear what they're asking for it, they have to remove it. So mentors don't even go down that road. These are the advantages, these are the disadvantages.
And go ahead, Lynn.
To add something there too. Sorry, Shelley. It's just to say that, so there's Selwyn, myself, and Belgique, but there are many, many other mentors that come through the lab on the ground and other people that we introduce you to. So you're sort of building a network of people that you can consult with on your project, whether it's on budgeting or distribution or financing. So there are many levels of mentorship that happen there. Sorry, Shelley, I'll let you go ahead.
That's perfect. I think one thing that all of our labs we take pride in is the connection and the going full circle. We have people that are in labs one year and then they decide to try for a different lab because a filmmaker might want to try something different. So we become connectors, and that's something we're proud of. And I know, Lynn, for sure, you've been on projects that have come through this lab, right?
Yeah.
So that's
definitely,
good. So we have a question that comes up every year, just to clarify something, is about the does the Doc Lab consider a docu-series or feature docs only? That's one thing. And advice for deciding whether to make a feature or a limited series, like for length and focus, like how would you answer those?
Well, first of all, I think that we're open to short. I think we had a doc a few years ago that was a 30-minute doc that got made, feature doc last year, but certainly a limited series, and we're, a series. I think we're open to all forms, basically. What about you, Selwyn?
Yeah, I would say Realistically, I don't think we can do like an 8-part series, but I think we might have had people who had films which could be easily be a 3-part series or 4 parts, something like that. And we had a case where somebody was waffling, wanted to know, they're thinking about an 80-minute doc, and then you listen to the content and the approach to it, and somebody said, "Have you thought about doing this as a 420-minute?" series. So again, that's we don't have any preset judgment or criterion to say this is what we are looking for. Again, it comes back to the question, what project do you really want to make? What stories do you really want to tell? And how are you going to reach the audience?
And this might be too big of a question, is who is currently funding docs these days? Maybe like the pulse of the industry right now, what's happening with docs?
Well, that's a very big question, isn't it? Great docs are being made, great docs are being funded, or good docs are being funded, great docs are being made. Funders are out there. It's competitive. I've seen substantial development support. I've also seen people, and I count myself among them, working for a year or two without any support. It's a whole range. I think there are really a lot of great filmmakers who are, it's not an easy field. I think it is very challenging, but it's still possible and certainly worthwhile. I don't know what else to say. It's tough. I think the market read is it is challenging, and international co-productions, I mean, if you're in that, is more and more required if you're looking for financing for bigger projects. There are opportunities in Canada regionally and nationally for early to mid-career filmmakers still. Don't you think, Selwyn?
Yeah, I would say at the national level, it's really tough. I mean, all you have to do is pick up the trades, and you'd see telefilm funded, 16 million, etc. And then you look at the breakdown, and the bulk of the money would be going to Ontario,
Yes, we
Quebec,
saw that with the
and then
POV fund. Yeah.
you might see one project from all of Western Canada. So that's the reality of the funding. Now, if you look locally at the people who are sponsoring this network, you can get development money from Creative BC, right, Lynn? Not Creative, at least initial funding, they may come in. I wouldn't know if you
It's
put that.
it's small. We have some small triggers, but I hear good things that the CBC might have more money for development. I have no idea, but this
Okay.
is a possibility. And you're quite right. The recent POV fund announced one project from BC out of 23 nationally, nearly 5 million, and we got one project, but we're gonna work on that. We better work on that. But
But
yeah,
again, I mean, these are people too. They're not emergent filmmakers. I'm not sure what the background of this cohort is. But if you're sort of the emergent level locally, you might want to consider TELUS. They've got certain programs there, and it's basically for filmmakers in Alberta, BC, and certain parts of Ontario. We have a broadcaster knowledge network who do some originals. And at least, if your work relates to British Columbia, there's a very good chance that if you meet the executive producer and there's a possibility that might really happen, you get to know who are the people there. And a lot of people who have been through this have been successful getting their work on our knowledge network. So I would have that done as one of the local potential for funding.
yeah. So I guess that's more. Yeah, I saw your note, Shelley. I think it is good if we can hear from the people that are and hear what they want to know about.
Just jumping in here.
Yeah.
Lynn, you kind of answered this question already, but I guess we've talked about it a little bit. But I guess I find that the cohort is quite short. So yeah, those 2 days of online, a few hours, and then you jump right into the Whistler Film Festival. So I'm just wondering, you would probably say then that that cohort is maybe a little bit more geared towards pitching yourself and towards like finding the distributors and the funders and whatnot, rather than kind of figuring more of the story design. Would you say that it's like probably more geared towards you being a little more ready to jump into that world than it would be to hash out what empty spaces are in your doc?
It's a really good point, Aaron. Really what I think is, I do think our story development or story advancement happens between yourself and the mentor who you meet independently outside of the two onlines. And I would say that and it goes on through the cohort as you get feedback from your fellow members or participants, and you get the market feedback. So market feedback, content summit feedback, where you've had all these discussions, and it's up to you to drive that. If that's where you want to focus, then I think that's what you say. Like, I'll have a meeting with each participant prior to the online portion, and hopefully then with your mentor, you've identified what you want to do. And if you identify something that you need, I'll do the best I can, and I'm sure the mentor you're partnered with will, to find whoever it is that can help give you some guidance. But I would say that it's not a deep story development process unless you make it that. That's sort of how I would describe it. We
Right.
don't, it's not.
Yeah, that makes
I've
sense.
answered that.
Yeah. And I just had another question kind of around the narrative POV approach. Just speaking specifically for myself, I'm my access to the material is immediate, and it's like the most personal you can get. But then at some point, I'm hoping to shine the light on some Indigenous culture here in BC, and I'm wondering what that could look like in terms of having like the Indigenous involved and them telling their story the way they would like it to be told. And I'm just wondering how those two places meet. If there is a topic that is pertinent to both of these, to myself, to this culture that I'm talking about, and also the Indigenous culture, I'm wondering if how to go about that, or if the documentary cohort has some experience bridging kind of these two cultures together. Or
Definitely there's experience. I'm going to turn this to Selwyn, because I think 100% that's, Indigenous Screen Office guidelines and protocols, but I think Selwyn has a lot of experience, so I'll stuff.
Yeah, so what I'd say, Aaron, well, I was at the film board for about 23 years, and over that period, I think I did about a dozen films that were Indigenous directors. My latest film was Now is the Time by Chris Octor. So we work with the Haida people. I work with Lisa Jackson, Dana Claxton. Dennis Allen did something called Crazy Water. I did one on residential schools, Holy Angels by J. Cardinal Villeneuve. And I think at the film board, we're prepared. We have somebody by the name of Alanis Obomsawin. And so producers know how to deal with, dealing with authenticity. I think that's important in authenticity. And so I wouldn't feel challenged unnecessarily, even though there were guidelines. I think the film board was ahead of its times, in doing that, even when we'd go up to Haida Gwaii, for example, and Christopher Octor wanted to restage something. And just a simple thing like the dialect, we were doing a dialect, and the dialect between Masset and forget what's the other place, it's all Haida Gwaii, but the language was different. And Christopher did the research to make sure that he got this specific dialect. And he was a stickler for details, because at the end of the day, you have to show the film to the community, and the community is going to let you know whether you've gotten it or you haven't gotten it. So again, I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but I think I feel comfortable because of my experience working with Indigenous storytellers. So I can help you out in that regard. But I'm sure anybody else right now, because of the ISO, people are tuned with that. So did you have permission from the community? Did you have approval? And sometimes you may not have approval. I wanted to work with Dennis Allen. He was doing a
Yes,
film.
we understand, but here we cannot.
Yes. Sorry. Are we back on?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, so Crazy Water is dealing with a topic nobody wanted to talk about. It's alcoholism in the indigenous community. And Dennis, the director, was a recovering alcoholic. And even within his own family, they didn't want to tell the story. And so we are dealing with something like that. But he wasn't making a generalization, but he was just trying to tell his personal story as to why his father was an alcoholic and he was an alcoholic, but he didn't want his children to become an alcoholic. And his goal is that we're going to go back to the land. So we went up to Baby Island in the summer and did, expose the kids to whale hunting, which is, accepted right now, and so on. So little things like that. And when the film came out, we realized that it was a positive film, even though it dealt with a negative topic. And so, same thing with Holy Angels. Nobody wanted to touch residential schools, but Jay Villeneuve was one of the videographers when they were taking those testimonials. And he got permission from just one woman to tell her story. So again, we did it, but did it in a creative and different ways. So I could walk you through Lisa Jackson when she did a short animation and how we got the story. It was from a storyteller. We took the story, adapted it to animation, and got a nice short film. So it can be done.
Forgive my ignorance. So when you were speaking about the one woman who was giving her story, do you get permission from her? Did you also have to get permission from the community as well, or would it just be the individual that you were getting the permission?
Well, it's all relative. The point I was trying to make there is that we were not talking about the residential schools, the big issue. Her name was Lena Wandering Spirit. And so we had to get permission from her specifically and her immediate environment, like her family members and the community right in that area. Can't remember, it's Northern Alberta or Northern BC. But in some cases, you may have to go wider. But again, that's the filmmaker's responsibility. The first question you'd ask, have you discussed this with the community and do you have their permission to tell that story?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some questions that I knew as a producer working with Indigenous storytellers that had to make sure that we'd cover those bases.
That's a great overview, Selwyn. And I think, Aaron, what you will find is that typically in our labs, we do have guests who are very knowledgeable in that area. So you'll have an opportunity to explore that experience that way, not just Selwyn, but others also who've traversed this territory. So that's good to be thinking about that.
Good. And Aaron, if you have any other questions after, feel free to email me and I can always pass them along. Arnold, jump in.
Oh, thank you, Shelley. I had a good question about the eligibility and the competitive nature of this particular lab, i.e., in the program description, it notes that this program is for BC-based Canadian documentary filmmakers, and it also notes that one of the applicants must provide a CV indicating past documentary and film experience, and links to past docs. So I don't have experience making docs. I have experience making scripted narrative films, but I have a doc that would be my first doc. Is this program for people like myself, or is this more for people that have more documentary experience than myself?
I'll answer that. We do welcome applicants like yourself who have experience making films in other genres. If you have a strong concept in this area or as a documentary, for a documentary, we welcome it. I don't think we typically look at the project and the filmmaker vision and statement of intent is usually the most relevant for our assessment. And obviously, if you haven't made a doc, we've had many participants who've not made docs in the past. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a question from Leslie Ann.
Hi, how are you? Sorry I was late. I was in a Zoom meeting. I have a question. So, well, a couple of things. One, my Melody Makers, my last documentary feature screened, it had its Canadian premiere at Whistler, which was great. Yeah, thank you. Um, and I love the festival. And I didn't realize that the lab was only for BC based documentary filmmakers. So I am
This year. Yeah.
this year. So I am in the wrong room. But it wasn't previously, was it? Or is it just, I didn't think
No,
so.
it's sponsor dependent. So if right now this year we have sponsorship from two BC based sponsors, and that is why we're using BC as for this year. But it changes up, I don't know, a few times, eh, Lynn?
Yes, it has changed. I mean, we don't, we take direction from the sponsors, I think, in terms
Yeah,
of what
no,
they're.
I understand that. I run the
Yeah.
Female Eye, or I founded and direct the Female Eye in Toronto, Ontario.
Okay,
So
bravo.
I totally understand sponsors and
Yeah, well, that's.
Leslie Ann, if you were to come to the festival, you'll see Lynn and Selwyn, and
great.
they're so welcoming to meet other people who've made documentaries. Like it's such an open lab. This is one of my very favorite labs because of the fact that it's so open, it's so comfortable and approachable. So even though you're not BC based, you could still be connected in some way to us.
Really? Okay, cool. Yeah, because I kind of like I spent my formative years out west and then we moved to Ontario. But the project I have is very national. It's like it will definitely have a national and an international appeal. It's sort of a personal story, but not really. It just goes back in my family about an abduction of six of my cousins.
Wow.
And
Sounds exciting.
yeah, in the 70s, late 70s, and it changed Canadian law as it pertains to parents traveling abroad. So now they have to have consent from the other parent to take the child overseas. So it's kind of like I've inherited all these bins of archival material and just in some insane stuff that I did not know. There was a skeleton in the family closet. But the interesting thing is it changed Canadian law as it pertains to parents traveling abroad. And I think I'm ready to tackle this story now because I've been doing some research. But I will hopefully make it to Whistler and meet with some folks. That's really great to know. But I don't want to take any more of your time because I'm not eligible for the lab proper. But I'm very
sorry it didn't. Yeah, sorry about that this year. But yeah, reach out to Shelley and we'll see you at the summit because we are there. It's all a small building and
yeah, so cool.
And definitely sign up for the newsletter. And the thing is, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn and stuff, I do try to post from other places if there is documentary possibilities or opportunities.
Okay, great. I appreciate that, Shelley.
Okay, well, thanks, Leslie Ann. Anybody else that was in the meeting? Sarah, Desiree, anybody have a question? Or even if you want to talk about what you're working on?
I'm just going to jump in.
Sure, of course.
I'm just wondering, so if we get to that stage where we're in the room with the distributors and the investors and the people who can make financing happen, I guess if the material feels quite sensitive, how can you be sure to trust the people that are that you're speaking to and pitching to, if it feels like the story could be quite sensitive, I suppose. I don't know if that's a good question, but
I'm not 100% sure of
Like if it's
what you mean by the trusting part.
if it's an investigative kind of like expose, how can you be sure that someone is not going to sound the alarm?
Sound the alarm.
Like, how can you be sure that that just because it could potentially come back on you that you're making a story or an expose about something that people might not want you to make an expose about? How can
Wow,
you be
that's a good
sure to trust?
question. That's a good question. I think it's so detailed that it might bear some discussion with people like your mentor or reaching out, but maybe don't put publicly, like in your pitch, details that you like somebody could read until you're ready to disclose those. So maybe keep it a little bit more general and not specific names or details that could be problematic. I mean, I think the trust question is take it. I don't mean that there's people that you can't trust, but just to be careful. And many of these meetings are private meetings, and so you'll have to make that assessment in the discussion. I'm going to turn this over to Selwyn. He probably has a better answer.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily better. I think you have to distinguish whether you're doing an investigative journalistic documentary, which is somewhat, it's like W5 or Fifth Estate, and that's one way. And I don't think those are the sort of documentaries that we might be focusing on, because CBC and CTV, when they're doing those programs, they have a whole bunch of legal staff who can actually take care of those criteria that you're talking about. You trying to do an independent one, the sensitivity is not so much about that. I've been in that area, like, okay, Baljit's last film was called Because We're Girls, and it was about sexual, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, incest literally within the Punjabi community, where four sisters in one family were sexually assaulted by a member. And it'd been hushed up for generations. And then the filmmaker came to me, and just out of a knee-jerk reaction, I said, well, have you discussed this with your husband? That's the first question I ask her, because you're going to be embarrassing your husband, because within that culture, it's something that's not, discussed. And so we danced around that, and she was the only one, if you want to call, and her story. And then one sister came on board, and by the time we got in, we got the confidence, and all four sisters but one decided to participate. Then mom and dad decided to participate. And I mean, it was an incredible time. And when the film was released, it got a standing ovation, because the community, for something that was embarrassing to them, they said it is time that the story was put out there. So that's a scenario where you're dealing with sensitive, because it went to the Supreme Court and all this sort of thing. So you have to, there's layers of sensitivity. With Crazy Water about alcoholism, the filmmaker's sister said, do not make a film about my dad. I don't want you to be telling people that our dad was an alcoholic. But he said, I can tell my story. Mm-hmm. So he felt that he was in a legitimate position to tell that story. Again, the sister came on board when the film was finished. So again, you could be dealing with sensitivity material, but it depends on how you use that material will determine whether the finished film would be accepted or not. So I'd leave that out there. But I think the fact that you're putting it out there is that you have to have this discussion with the people closest to you to really figure out that and get permission from the subjects that this is where I intend to go. And I usually ask, is there anything that you don't want to talk about? And you put that down on the paper, and the person has said, okay, I don't want you to say this about me or what have you. So, discuss it, but you need to have a producer who would help you go through those aspects of the telling of the story. Lynn?
That sounds like a good overview. There are many issues, but welcome to discuss further.
Thank you.
Down the road.
And with the cohort themselves, they sign, like the participants all sign a letter, like a memo of understanding, and everything is kept confidential. There's no social media posts about anybody else's. So they're signing an actual contract saying that it's under, all confidential. That's the best we can do. So then it's, you reveal anything. If you reveal something you don't want people to know, that's, you just kind of have to think that through.
Okay, thank you.
So quickly, I saw Arnold asked a question about that Shelley answered around the participation at the at the summit, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Do you have anything remaining, Arnold? Did Shelley adequately answer the question for you?
Thank you for that answer, Shelley. The reason that I asked that is because part of the Screenwriters Lab, we get the opportunity to book some one-on-ones and some other potential meetings with people that are there, and I just wanted to know generally what the schedule might be. So if there was an opportunity to continue that, or would this mean that I couldn't do that? I just wasn't 100% certain.
It
How have
seems
you
like
done that in the past, Lynn? Like if he's meeting with somebody as a screenwriter and during the one-on-ones,
I guess he would exclude himself from whatever, but are these very, I would, maybe we could follow up after in any more detail. I need to, I don't see it. Ideally, your focus is the Doc Lab if you're there. And if you have other meetings, other people do that as well. They have a couple of projects and they meet with people, but they have to work it out. I can't say more.
Something I also
Sorry,
say.
Sorry, Arnold. I don't
No,
know
that's
the
great.
answer.
Thank you.
I tell the groups all the time, and I told the producers lab, Arnold, this last week, is that you're only getting 10 minutes for the festival one-on-ones. If there's somebody that you would love to meet, but you're in the Doc Lab, I can introduce you and you'll get a half an hour meeting. So don't ever be, tied into thinking you're only going to get that 10 minutes with that person from Amazon. We can make other arrangements on the side.
Thank you. Yeah, I would absolutely focus on the Doc Lab because that seems
Yeah.
like the focus, and I welcome that and I expect that. I just was wondering if they were all day or if there were, pockets of time that we were able to take other meetings. But if not, that would be fine too. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah, I saw you had a question around if you have something already in development, can it be submitted for consideration or as you intend to develop it into a longer format? And I think that's a very welcome approach if it's suitable material. I mean, the independent committee will take a look at what you're proposing, but I think if you've already developed something, yes, that seems sensible to me that it might evolve into a longer form I don't know what the project is, but it's sensible if Selwyn, just to make sure, running it by you. Sarah's question is if I've already have a development of a shorter form and I want to look at expanding it or evolving it into a longer form, if I understood the question, is that acceptable as a project?
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's something to be discussed with the mentor, and the mentor would be in a good position to advise you accordingly whether you should continue working on this short piece or whether it should evolve into a bigger piece. Again, a mentor should be able to, and even just the experience of being out there with the cohort, right? At some point, you would have had the time to present your idea to the group at large. And certainly you would have 6 people who would be in a position to say, well, this is not working for me, or why did you try this, or it feels incomplete, I think those are some of the questions you can get suggestions and recommendations, not only from the cohort, but from the other people that we bring in to speak to you. We might bring in people from Knowledge Network, from other organizations, and they greenlight projects. So they have experience in listening to pitches, listening to ideas. So they can give you advice that you can choose to accept or not accept. Lynn?
That sounds good to me.
I
Any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions? And if you do have something that you think about when this is over, just send me an email. I put my email into the chat, and we can get that answered for you. Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for coming. You have something else, Lynn?
Well, yeah, just I saw this one last question. Are permanent residents of Canada eligible to apply? Yes, they are. I saw that on here.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so make sure if you're applying, and we really do hope you are, and thank you for coming to this. Make sure you have your application in by September 14th, and it's by midnight, like 11:59 BC time. That would be great. Spread the word. As far as I know, this is going up on the website, so you can share the link. I'll share whatever I can via email as well. I'll link to this once it's ready to go. Okay, well, thank you, Selwyn. Thank you, Lynn. And they're awesome to work with, and it's super fun. Everybody has a great time at the festival. So,
Thank you.
Thank
okay,
you,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Hope to see you at the festival. Bye bye now.
Good luck.
Take care. Or before.